Let's dive into the cost for a rental
Right.
in Lima, Peru. People are interested in how affordable rentals are there. What can you share on that?
Just for rent. This is like you'd be lucky to get this and really have it, be happy with it. Okay. So I'm paying about $331 a month, right?
331 for a two bedroom.
For a modest two bedroom. It's not big, it's modest two bedroom.
All right, so today we are heading down to the beautiful country of Peru with my new friend Eric Anderson. Eric, thank you for being a part of the podcast.
Sure.
It's a pleasure to
Thanks
meet
for
you.
inviting. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a pleasure to meet you. So you've had quite the extraordinary life. You've lived all over the place,
Uh-huh.
and you ended up in the beautiful city of Lima in
Yeah.
Peru. Give us a little backstory about you and where you're originally from and how you landed in Peru of all the places, because you've lived in other places around the world and traveled extensively.
Right. So how did I land in Peru? The backstory is that in 1993, I visited Japan and I was there for more or less 2 months. And part of that, I took a week in South Korea going over on the boat. So I got to know South Korea, actually looking for a job, didn't find one, went back to Los Angeles. And then I was put in touch with a Korean lady who was a school principal, and she got me directed me to an opportunity to teach in South Korea, and I took that. So I spent 3 years in South Korea, and then I came back to Los Angeles. I spent 5 months in Taiwan after that, a few years after that. And then after that, I met a Peruvian woman. We got married. And then in 2004, and then in 2009, the economy was kind of not doing well. And so our escape was to go to Lima, Peru, where she owned a condo. And so there we were in Lima, Peru, and since 2000, I've been here since 2009. In 2013, I got Peruvian citizenship by naturalization.
Wow. Very cool. So do you have a Peruvian passport?
Right.
So you have dual citizenship now.
That, that's correct. Right. It's if you're going to live in another country, it's an advantage to have citizenship in that country.
Sure. Quick question. I mean, for anybody, for the viewers that are interested in moving or retiring to Peru, how long would you need to live there as a residence to be able to apply for permanent residency and obtain a passport?
So that you're on a different track than the one I was on because excuse me, as a spouse, with a Peruvian spouse, I was able to get residency quickly.
Hmm.
Without that, then it's a different process. And I would say the main thing is you need a certain level of income. Okay.
Okay.
Now it's not really I'm not an expert about that track. But it's probably somewhere between 1,000 and $2,000 a month. I think that will somewhere in that range will can get you a residence. There's different types of residence. I do see people talking about it. Um, it's called a rentista. Um, they look at your income. If you have independent income, that's the main thing that I'm aware of. Uh, you could get a business visa. Okay. It's like a little bit complicated. You end up needing to consult with the right kind of lawyer. Okay. So, but there certainly are a lot of people that do that here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going into the visa requirement too. So there's for the
Yeah.
residency permit, you're saying
Right.
you got to make somebody has to show a pension or an income of like between 1,000 to 2,000 per month.
Yeah, that's just it's in that range. Okay, I don't have the exact number, but it's in that range.
Okay. And then
Uh-huh.
after so many years of becoming a
Of
temporary
having,
resident,
yeah.
you can apply for permanent residency, which will allow you to obtain the passport.
Again, it's not my expertise, but it's basically that. You're headed for permanent residency. I think that basically you're a resident. It's like you're either there's a lot of people here who are not. They're here on a tourist visa, and it's
Hmm.
become more restrictive. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Right. But people do apply for residency as retirees.
Okay. Eric, you've been down there since 2009.
Correct.
Have you seen an uptick in people moving from the US and Canada to Peru? Have you seen an increase?
Well, I don't, it's not something that's really on my radar what the exact number is, but certainly can say that there is a good number of foreigners, especially from the US, living in Peru. Whether it's an uptick, I don't think it's going down. It's probably going up moderately.
Hmm.
What's going up significantly is you've got a lot of people coming in from Venezuela. They're economic refugees, so that's a different category.
Sure. Okay. Tell us a little bit about Lima itself, the city. Describe what it's like. The pictures that you see
Yeah,
are really stunning. I mean,
yeah,
the shoreline is gorgeous. I spent
right.
some time in Lima
Uh-huh.
and really enjoyed it, and it has some really beautiful parts of the city as well. But give us your take. What's your thoughts on the city, and give us a
Right.
feel of what it's like.
Well, I agree. The shoreline, yeah, is in a district called there's a district called Miraflores and a district called San Isidro. They are where most of the foreigners live, I would
Mhm.
say.
Yes.
The biggest share of they're the most expensive districts, and each of them has the coastline is a cliff. So you
Yes.
have luxury high-rise apartments perched on this cliff, so it's very well manicured and with this incredible view, as you can imagine,
Hmm.
but very
Yes.
expensive. But
Okay.
many foreigners live in other districts. But in that overall area, because there's districts close to that one, there's a district called Barranco, which is a kind of bohemian district. Um, but Lima is geographically big, and the population is on the order of 9 or 10 million people, the
Yeah.
metropolitan area.
Yeah, it's a pretty large city, I remember. Today's video is sponsored by Safety Wing Nomad Insurance, the ideal choice for retirees, adventurers, and digital nomads. Whether you're exploring new homes abroad or living internationally, Safety Wing provides affordable, reliable health and travel insurance. It's available for purchase in 180 countries. It even includes coverage in your home country. And here's the best part. If you're already visiting a country and thinking, we should have gotten insurance before we left, it's not too late. With Safety Wing, you can apply online even while you're already abroad. It's that simple. You can scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description below to learn more and get covered today. Now let's get back to the podcast. Let's dive into the cost for a rental
Right.
in Lima, Peru. People are interested in how affordable rentals are there. What can you share on that?
Well, I am paying below market, I would say. Especially, I'm not in the high rent district. I'm in a lower middle class district. My wife is actually from Venezuela, and we
Okay.
got married a year ago. Okay, minus a couple of weeks, and so we have a two-bedroom apartment, and I these days I think in terms of Peruvian currency. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so so we're paying the Peruvian currency is it's soles, the
Mm-hmm.
Peruvian sol. Now I can like try to calculate it here.
Yeah,
Let
that'd be
me.
great.
So if I'm paying just for rent, this is like you'd be lucky to get this and really have it, be happy with it. Okay. So I'm paying about $331 a month. Okay.
331 for a two bedroom.
for a modest two bedroom. It's not big. It's modest two bedroom.
Hmm.
Now, our utilities, we're paying an extra $20 a month that they tack on top of that. And my internet is about $25 a month.
Okay, so for utilities, you're saying it's only $25? That's electric, water, gas.
Well, the thing is that we're in a small apartment building. Let me calculate this. No, it's about $26 a month.
And that covers gas, electric, water?
Doesn't cover gas. It's electricity. It's basically electricity and
Okay.
water. Now for gas, we buy we buy a can of gas. They call it a ballon of gas. And so we have to get one of those every 6 weeks or so.
Okay.
And that costs 50 soles a month. So it's about $13.
So about every other month.
Yeah, every 6 weeks, every 2 months.
So the utility cost is 25 for all the utilities.
Right,
Propane is 13. You're paying about 25 for Wi-Fi.
right.
Why are the utilities? I mean, how do you heat that? How do you heat your apartment?
Um, well, this doesn't, oh, I have an electric heater.
I see.
Okay. Now, we don't need it right now. Okay. We're going into the summer. We're in the southern hemisphere.
Yes.
Um, and so we have an electric heater. So that might, I don't know, so add a little bit to our electricity bill.
And I'm guessing that the air conditioning will as well.
Well, we don't have air conditioning. It's possible to have air conditioning. We have a fan.
Hmm.
So it's like you could just say, okay, we suffer. I would say the weather in Lima is mild,
Okay.
relatively mild. So it gets cold and it doesn't get super cold, and it gets hot and humid a little bit, but it doesn't get super hot and humid. It's just mild.
I see.
Also, it doesn't rain in Lima.
Oh, wow. One of
Mhm.
the things I remember when I was in Lima, it was just always overcast. It was very gray. Is that
Well,
typical?
it's typical for about 6 months out of the year.
So weather is pretty good throughout the year. Doesn't get too hot, doesn't
Yeah,
get too cold.
yeah, that's my opinion. For people that live here, they freak out when it gets a little bit warm.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's why the beaches are nearby. You just jump in the
that's true.
water.
Yeah, the beaches are nearby.
Okay. So Eric, what do you guys budget per month for groceries?
Oh, we're not really organized in terms of budgets.
Okay.
However, people have different lifestyles. We have a very modest lifestyle. Between my wife and I, we're basically it's a bit less than two. We're able to meet our expenses on a little bit less than $2,000 a month.
So all in,
Right.
you guys are at 2000 about, little under.
Yeah. We don't go to restaurants very much. I go to special markets. So I'm economizing by getting good prices. There's this big market called Minka, which is near the airport. I go there to buy all of my meat.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's like they've got like six butchers. Okay, so I have my favorite butcher, and their cows are in the semi-tropical interior.
Hmm.
I'm assuming that they're grass-fed animals based on that. I can give you some figures, right? Like a kilo of beef could cost me 20 soles. So that is $5 for a
Okay.
kilo. So that would, that's about 2 pounds.
That's very affordable.
Now, right, I hear that prices are going up rapidly on certain things in the US. At this moment, to me, I don't see that in Peru.
Okay. Okay.
I can tell you that a few years ago, um, that people were fixated on inflation, okay? And it was complicated by the fact that they had protests that were interrupting transportation, and people were raising prices. But in the last year or two, the prices have been pretty stable.
Okay. That's that's good to
Yeah,
hear. Does this
right.
sound, I mean, does it make sense that you guys would pay About 200 a month, or would it be a little bit more than that?
It could be a little bit more than that, but it could be less. The problem is that I'm not, you see, it's easy enough on our budget that I'm not paying attention to it. You see,
Yeah, I gotcha.
right? Don't have a
Okay.
budget for food. It comes out. I actually literally I'm on Social Security. I'm actually drawing down a little bit more than I'm receiving in Social Security, and I have a little bit of extra income, and it balances out right now. But that's not an ideal way to live because if things take a wrong turn, what do you do? It's
True.
not an ideal way to live, right?
True.
Where you're spending everything that's coming in. Yeah.
That's very
Now,
true.
the thing is, right, really, rent is, for most people, rent is the biggest item on their budget. I'm very much at the low end. I mean, I'm paying through, what did I say, about $330 a month?
Yes.
Um, Probably the average for a retired person on a modest income is going to be more than that. It's going to be, and it could be in the range of 500 or 600 a month. I mean, we have a two-bedroom apartment. My wife has her son lives with us, so that's why we have a two-bedroom apartment.
It sounds to me like you don't live in Miraflores or the
Right, I
high
know.
the high dollar areas where most expats live. It
Right.
sounds like you live in just a Peruvian local neighborhood. So my question to
That's
you,
right.
if you decide
Yeah.
to live in one of those neighborhoods, I mean, are there a
Huh.
lot of rents out there for 330? I mean, if you got a two bedroom, I'm guessing one bedrooms are going to be a little bit less in those parts of Lima. Is that possible to find rentals for 200, 250 for a one bedroom?
Well, here's how it works. Um, you can get cheaper rentals if you go to an area that's not safe. The Lima is physically big. There's these districts that are really big, and the prices are cheaper, but they're dangerous.
Hmm.
So there's areas I just won't live because they're dangerous. Okay. So I'm
Hmm.
in an area that's I started living in my district in the building I'm in. I first moved into it in about 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And I was in studio apartments. Much started in really half less than half of what I'm currently paying. And then I moved south for a year. I was in a city of Arequipa, and then came back. And after we got married, we got this two-bedroom apartment. And so we were very lucky. We felt very lucky when it was available when we were at the time when we needed something, right? It's like you have a unit with not very many units. So for something to come open,
Hmm.
we were very happy with that.
Hmm.
Um, so if we're getting for our we could easily spend a lot more money on a two-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
50% more, right? Or double or triple in Miraflores, San Isidro, 3 or 4 times what we're paying.
For the person though that wants to
Hmm.
like again immerse themselves in the Peruvian culture, doesn't really want to be around the foreigners or the expats. They're ready to immerse themselves in a nice neighborhood in Peru like you're living. I mean, can you find stuff under 330 for a one bedroom or studio?
I don't think so. For a one bedroom, you probably can,
Hmm.
right? Now, I would be looking on for apartments on like Facebook Marketplace, and there's different websites where you can find them. But we're still a little bit below the market even for a one bedroom,
Oh, okay.
right? And location, I mean, location is everything. There are alternatives to living in the city, but you have to consider if you were to live in another city, it would be cheaper,
Hmm.
right? Cities, there are cities in the mountains that I love. One is called Ayacucho, another one is called Cajamarca, and there are also communities that are closer to Lima where you might find something for a little bit less, but not half.
You were like you mentioned you lived in Arequipa, and I hear that
Correct.
yeah, that's a really cool town that I've heard, and I hear that's really affordable down there. But I've looked at some of the imagery. It's a beautiful town.
Yeah, it is. We actually had a penthouse apartment. and
Wow.
we were paying less than we were paying here. And the what we didn't realize was that on the floor below us was a discotheque.
Oh,
So that was hard to deal with. Finally, it went away, but that was really not fun. But the other thing is that it's a desert city, and you get sand and dust blowing in constantly. So if you can
ah,
imagine it, that's not really ideal. For me, Arequipa was not like a terrifically exciting place to live. It's close to, there's a place called Coca Canyon where the condors are, which I
hmm.
visited 2 times. But a lot of people who live in Lima, probably expats, would not want to live in Arequipa.
Okay, interesting.
Right.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I've been
Yeah.
trying to find somebody to do a talk with them on Arequipa because I've heard a lot of good things about that city, but um
Uh,
and I've
yeah.
seen I've looked at a lot of the imagery of it too, and it's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful place and it's
Well,
super cheap.
yeah. Well, see, okay, so the historic city center of Arequipa is fantastic. I do photography. It's great for that. But when I was in Arequipa, I actually had a hard time finding an apartment. I
Oh,
actually, for lack of finding an apartment at the end of our lease, I didn't find one, and I moved back. Because of that, I moved back to Lima.
wow, interesting. All right, well, Eric, let's move on to restaurants. What is a typical
Yeah.
Peruvian meal like? Most of the viewers are interested in just going to a local, regular mom and pop restaurant. What are they going to pay for a meal in Lima?
Okay. So it's going to be either side of about $4.
Okay. So about $4. And what do you get for the $4? What kind of a meal is that?
You're going to get, it's a meat and potatoes. You're going to get chicken or beef or pork
Okay.
with, normally with rice or potatoes, and you're going to get a salad or soup or a salad.
Oh, wow. So you get a lot of food for $4.
Yeah, normally you get good portions. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so typically at these mom and pop restaurants anywhere around Lima, you can find these meals for approximately $4.
Right. Now in Miraflores, they might be a little more expensive, you see.
Sure. Yeah,
Um,
it is.
but but we're not really that into going to restaurants. We every week or so we go eat, we get shawarma, which is not Peruvian, but
Hmm.
that's cheap.
Hmm.
That's but less than $4.
Hmm.
We My wife likes Chinese food. That's less than $4.
Hmm.
Um, but we have like little markets. We can walk to. There's like 3 different markets we can visit. There are bakeries that there's like 4 or 5 bakeries we can walk to, little laundromats we can visit. Now there are chain stores where you can buy staples, rice and soda and all that kind of stuff.
Nice. So these markets, a lot of times they have these outdoor little cafes where you can just eat there in the mercado. What do meals go for in those
Yeah.
places?
Oh, they're about 350.
Okay. About 350 in the
Yeah.
mercados. Okay. So very affordable
Yeah.
for a good
Yeah.
plate of food. All right, great information. Do you
Right.
have any idea how much you guys budget per month if you go out to eat? Go
We're
now.
not really into going to restaurants. My wife
Gotcha.
is a nurse. She works 6 days a week. She
Hmm.
leaves at 6 a.m. and gets back frequently around 7 or 7:30 in the evening, and she's tired and is not up for going to a restaurant.
Gotcha.
Okay. And so she has on Sundays, she's not that type of person that must go to a restaurant. So we don't do it very much.
Yeah,
And partly it's economics, I think, partly.
sure. All right. The next thing is transportation. How do you get around Lima? Do they have any kind of metro system there? They obviously have a public bus system. I remember riding that there. And do they have rideshare
Yeah.
like Uber or anything like that?
They have Uber and some alternatives to Uber. There's definitely a selection of some choices on that.
Okay.
You've got taxis are not that expensive. Um, the public transit system is expanding, and then you have a lot of private bus companies. So I'm kind of that's where I'm an expert. I know these I can go anywhere on public transportation. So that means, I don't have a car. I don't recommend driving in Lima.
So what is the cost of the public transportation? If you get on a bus, you want to go across the city, you come back,
Right.
what are you going to pay?
The minimum bus fare is one sol, which is about 26 cents. So a longer bus ride, you might double that. The public transportation system, 3 soles more or less, so it is like, say, 70 cents to a little more than about a dollar, and that for the whole ride. There's a commuter train that has one line. They're expanding that, which means that it's harder to get around because the routes are detoured with construction. But so they're improving that. They're building more lines, which is helpful.
Mhm.
So if you're comfortable riding on the bus, you can get around. But you do want to be able to speak Spanish.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. And so it looks like you're saying that the most it's going to be about a dollar per ride to move around on the bus in Lima at the most.
The minute at the most,
Okay.
pretty much it could be a little bit more if it's a really long trip.
Okay.
Because you can go on a bus ride that's more than an hour, and then now, of course, that will cost more,
Yeah.
right?
How much would
So,
an hour long bus ride cost, do you think?
well, a 2 hour bus ride might cost you $2.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A 1 hour bus ride might cost you about a dollar or a dollar 50.
Okay. So I remember I took a bus and it was one of I learned from this process that it was a big mistake to make because I took a bus from Lima
Uh-huh.
to Cusco.
Yeah, that's a big mistake.
A big, big mistake. Took 22 hours.
Right,
Everybody on the
right,
bus, everybody on the bus who there were only two people on the bus that weren't Peruvian, me and this other person. And everybody else
right.
was Peruvian. And everybody
Yeah.
on that 22-hour bus ride to Cusco got sick. And everyone was puking in a bag. Everyone.
Well, you can go to Ayacucho and get that experience.
Yeah, everybody.
The ride to Ayacucho is like that.
That's when we learned what
Right.
soroche is, and everybody
Yeah.
got sick. It was really brutal, and the whole bus stunk. And we had about 5 more hours to arrive to Cusco. So for 5 hours, there were people just puking everywhere
Uh-huh.
it was just really unreal.
I wouldn't do that.
No, and that's
Right.
to let the viewers know, it's called altitude sickness. So you really go up in altitude when you take the bus
Right.
Lima to Cusco, and it's a 20 hour, 22-hour ride. It was 22 hours for us, and it's nonstop, and you're
Yeah.
just going around these, and it was at
You're
night
curving.
too, so
Right.
you can't see at night, and you're just doing this, turning, 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 but going up, and eventually the altitude hits you at such a degree that you
Yes.
feel like you have the flu. Your stomach becomes incredibly sick. You get very, very dizzy and you become incredibly
Right.
nauseous. And then everybody was just throwing up into these bags. And I'm like, wow, this is wild. And the good thing
Uh,
is that you can actually fly from Lima to Cusco and it takes about an hour to get there. And it's
and
not that
it's
expensive.
not that expensive.
Yeah,
Right.
so big, big learning. What a journey that was. It was quite an experience. I was just
Right.
chewing on coca leaves for the next couple days before
Uh-huh.
I checked out Machu
Right.
Picchu. But
Yeah.
okay, great. So that's good information on the transpo. Okay, so now that I know, Eric, that you are a disco kind of guy, you're a 70s guy, you lived above a discotheque in Arequipa, what are the things to do in Lima? You must go out to the clubs. You look like a
Well,
club
I
guy.
don't personally.
No.
No, no. The point is, see, we hated that disco, right? it was imposed on us. They didn't tell us before we moved in that there was this disco. So that was, I'm not a disco person.
Yeah.
But as far as Lima goes, see, Lima is a big cosmopolitan city. So you have a lot of stuff in Lima that you don't have elsewhere in South America, except
Hmm.
for Brazil has big cities,
Yes.
Buenos Aires probably, but it's one of the uh, elsewhere in South America, it's not like that.
Yeah.
Bogota, it's a cosmopolitan city. Um, I mean, you've got all of the international restaurants, right? Most of them. I mean, I'm spoiled. You see, I'm from Los Angeles, where you can get any food you can imagine.
Hmm.
So you don't have all of those choices, but you got the more common ones. You've got Korean restaurants, Japanese restaurants. Of course, Chinese are everywhere, but it's modified for Peruvian tastes. You've
Hmm.
got Indian restaurants, Turkish restaurants, Barranco. If you want to go clubbing, you go to Barranco.
Hmm.
Um, you've got parks. Um, you got all the historical stuff. The
Hmm.
zoo in Lima is an archaeology site,
Oh, interesting.
for example. Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. There's trips you can take out. You can go north and south and into the mountains. There's three different directions.
Yeah.
And so if you're in looking for a little bit of adventure, you can do that.
Yeah. Peru is a really incredible destination. It has everything. It offers everything, and the mountains are spectacular. The
Right.
beaches are
Yeah,
spectacular, and like you say, I mean, there's a lot of international flair in Lima, and it's known to be a great destination for food.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. It's a good economy. So if you are set up to spend the money, you can get very famous cuisine.
Yes.
I was I was being the tour guide for these guys that were visiting that had a very ample budget, and they said, "Oh, we had lunch. We went to Astra de Gaston. It's like one of the top restaurants in the world, you know." So I was impressed.
Hmm.
But you got famous restaurants here, famous, top rated,
Yeah. Lima's a hot spot in South America. And I think it's often
right?
overlooked. A lot of people go to Colombia, Ecuador first. It's a little bit closer to
Right.
Canada and the US. And then when they start trekking down a little bit further, a lot of people like
Uh-huh.
Brazil. A lot of people do like Brazil, and they do like Uruguay too. Uruguay is becoming more and more popular. So it's fascinating. I
Right.
think Peru is such an incredibly stunning country, and
Right.
it's amazing to me that it's overlooked the way that it is. You got the jungle, you have the Amazon. You
Right.
can go and participate and experience something that you just can't in the United States. You got the Amazon jungle, you got
Right.
the Andes Mountains, you got Machu Picchu, which is one of the most
Right.
spectacular ruins in the world. And you got
Yeah.
incredible beaches with just cliffside beaches
Right.
that just drop off. The landscape is
Right.
gorgeous there. It's really gorgeous.
Right.
You're living in a beautiful part of the world for sure. Well, the last thing we have, Eric, is healthcare. And this is always,
Okay.
one of the big things that retirees are interested in learning about the quality of the healthcare and is it affordable?
Well, you have to realize there's different levels of service. Okay, there's different systems. Um, the government is in Ministry of Health has two systems. One is for the low income people, and then they have an upper tier, which is you the lower tier doesn't cost anything. The upper tier, I'm on that and I'm paying about $57 a month.
And is that the
Now
public?
the
That's the public healthcare system?
it's yeah, it's public health, public hospitals, part of the public health system,
Now,
right?
can any expat access that?
I believe if you get residence here, you can go in to that.
Okay. How do they determine how much you
Right.
pay in?
It's a flat rate.
So everybody pays the
Okay,
same.
it's a flat rate. Well, I believe so. More now, the one that I'm in, there, if you're an employee, your employer will contribute to it. Now, that's one of many reasons why it's hard to become an employee here. See, the government, the laws force employers to do all these things. They are expensive, and so you're on a non-employee status. If many people are on a non-employee status.
Hmm.
And the other thing too is I'm paying monthly for this modest amount monthly for this service, but it's like you have to wait. It's hard to get an appointment. I got an appointment some weeks back, and it's for mid-January.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's not a well-run system.
Hmm.
They do have public health care. I don't have the details on how much that costs. I could imagine it could be half of what people pay in other countries.
Are you saying private healthcare or public?
Yeah, there are. You can get private health insurance.
Do you,
There are
you
a
don't?
variety of plans.
Okay, but you're
Yeah.
not sure what they run down there.
No, because I haven't had the system. I can't really tell you the exact price. It could depend on your age and so on.
Okay.
So because I'm not penalized for my age, the public health system is a good option in my opinion. But there is something else is that there is it's subsidized, I think, by the Ministry of Health, but there's a network of hospitals and clinics where it's pay for service. So if I want something, I don't want to wait. So I go to this other system and I pay a modest amount of money. So
Mhm.
that makes up for the fact that the system is not ideal. You combine these two things, basically.
I see.
So that's what I do.
So it sounds like you
Right.
have to, it sounds like for a routine checkup or something that you just need to go see a doctor about that isn't serious, it could take a while to get in. But for the healthcare that you have in the public healthcare system,
Yeah.
if you have something that's
Yeah.
serious that happens, will they take you in
Yeah.
immediately?
If it's an emergency, you're covered. I was on the bottom tier, which is the free tier, and I had a cardiac condition. And so I paid the clinic where you pay. I went there and they did the test. And then they said, you got to go handle this right away. And I got referred to one of the public hospitals. And they just booked me, they just admitted me into emergency based on the what was on the test result.
Wow.
Okay. I was, and then I was waited for about 5 days, and then I got a cardiac catheterization. And
Wow.
it was a world-class cardiac catheterization lab,
Okay.
you see.
Did
But
it
I was lucky though.
cost you
Yeah.
anything?
That didn't cost me anything.
Everything
No.
was fully
I've had
covered.
two, it was fully covered. I've had two laparoscopic surgeries here and they were fully covered.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
really good information. And it sounds like that you feel that the quality of care was exceptional.
Well, it's in terms of the medical side of it, it was no problem there, right?
Mhm.
It was not a five-star hotel.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're in a public hospital, it's not like a hospital in the United States. Okay. It's
Okay.
like old, right? The food is barely adequate. But when you actually get going into surgery, I wasn't worried about that.
I see. Okay. Well, interesting. Well, that's good. I'm glad that you found some good coverage down there to handle that because that's some pretty serious stuff. Well, that's everything, Eric, that we covered. Is there anything else that you can think of that we didn't touch on about living or retiring in Lima that could be beneficial for the viewers?
Well, I could take a minute and tell you about my experiences in Peru because it's if you're going to live in Peru, I went to Machu Picchu 2 times, took the airplane both times. I visited 2 places in the jungle. One is there's a city called Iquitos where you have to fly to get there.
Hmm.
And from there, I took a bus to a little town and I spent a few days in this little town. And there's only one road that leads out of Iquitos. It goes to this little town, right?
Hmm.
Um, and my other jungle trip, it's a place called Puerto Maldonado, which is near the border with Brazil. So I flew there. And it's on one of they're on these big rivers, right?
Yeah.
Very jungle type. It's a town in the jungle. Um, and I went across, took a vehicle and went across the border with Brazil. I spent a few days in Brazil. I have made several visits to these cities in the mountains that I've already mentioned that are incredible.
Hmm.
Of course, you've got your beaches. Um, there's a hot springs resort. It's about 3.5 hours out of Lima, which is when you get there, it's economical. So there's things like that Lima has that not every place has.
Yeah, there's so much to do there, and the areas that you're talking about are so very different. It
There's an
makes it
enormous amount of variety in Peru.
and per yeah. What kind of wildlife did you witness when you were in the jungle?
That's a good question. I really didn't see wildlife. In one of them, I went to a butterfly house. It's called a mariposario.
Hmm.
So they had a zoo, which was terrible.
Hmm.
It's like these zoos that are underfunded, they have no funding, and the animals look obviously unhappy. So it's
Hmm.
nothing, right? There's not a reason to go there, you see.
Hmm.
It's unfortunate. Um, I don't have a lot of there's a place on the coast where it's a preserve for animals. 2 places I visited one near Lima and the other one near Arequipa, where you've got all kinds of water birds that they're either migrating or they live there.
Hmm.
So that's part of the experience,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Eric Anderson, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to share all this information about this beautiful
Yeah.
place that you live in, Lima, Peru. I appreciate
Right.
it.
Uh-huh. Good. Good to have this conversation.
Yeah, you have a great rest of the day, and thanks again so much. We appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.